situational aspects of the game, rather than being generally strong, on top of having moves that are individually incredible
I decided I wanted to
but not very cohesive with
play
the
some more
For example,
Genshin
Lucas' edge
today.
guarding is probably top 5 in the game, having several attacks that effectively
So apparently,
so many characters. These two very powerful two-frame
people are
attacks
building
tilt and down smash,
Barbara
range edge guarding slash gaming tools to be
with the four-set flower pad the Sierra whatever and turning her into a bloom bot. That sounds interesting. So I'm actually farming that artifact right now. And then I want to experiment with a Quicken team, Nahida, and turn her into a DPS again with 4-set Deepwood. I still think Gilded is a better set for her. Then Deepwood.
Stuff that Ness doesn't have. Against a player who is fully aware of where and
But
what
yeah,
is threatening, his neutral becomes exceedingly
I'm continuing the Jet quest.
But in TLDR fashion, Lucas's moveset and attributes may not necessarily be better or worse than Ness, but on the surface, they're divergent from what players consider valuable in competitive play. Or basically, Ness is strong at ABC, while Lucas is strong at XYZ. Then again, I believe this makes him a potential late bloomer. Smash is progressively transitioning into a more whiff-punish trap-heavy meta spearheaded by Steve's rise to prominence. Lucas happens to be more effective than Ness in this regard. It may come at the added difficulty of a steep learning curve, but Lucas's tools can make him a strong answer to several meta powerhouses like Fox, Roy, Aegis, Kazuya, Rob, and Steve. We have a few token reps like Regalo and Chocotaco, but I feel like as more players discover how to make Lucas more consistent, we might see him pop up more. Up next, we have Wii Fit Trainer. Despite being significantly buffed from Smash 4 to Ultimate, as well as receiving further busted version updates, they have yet to make any meaningful strides in competitive. Most players collectively rate them around mid-tier, so they are tournament viable, but sort of suffer from the same problems Lucas does, having a wide arsenal of tools, just not the ones that everyone wants. Wii Fit's combo game and damage tracking capabilities are quite strong, especially in tandem with deep breathing. Unlike most close quarters combatants, they have not one, but two fantastic projectiles that can pressure a ton of characters into approaching, but the lackluster mobility and comically small hitboxes effectively discourages approaching as it gets spaced out by sorties and boxed out by brawlers, leading to them depending on Sun Salutation and Header to steadily rack up damage to then hopefully fish for a kill.
I want to see who has Favonius on everyone. I don't think I have anyone equipped with Favonius for Catalysts. Yeah.
Their opponent in the hopes that they run out of patience and go charging right into them, to which they can either go for an edge guard or hard punish. Here's the thing, that means more often than not, Wii Fit has to rely straight hits to close on stocks, despite being a character whose range, or lack thereof, is usually associated with kill setups, not really single hits. That's more for sorties or heavyweights. It's not to say that they don't have any semblance of combos or kill setups, it's just hindered by how risky it is because of their movement not being as fast or scary as
I would like to build Beidou some more.
Another potential issue is that while Wii
she
Fit has a
definitely
relatively fair
could
matchup
benefit
spread,
from some more crit
or
stats.
struggle against just so happen to be very popular, like Wolf, Roy, Ness, Cloud,
And she's never gonna deal big damage, but at the very least,
and it's one of the reasons why they play super
she's nothing more than a battery in the electro applicator.
Shutting down opponents who run out of patience and
right
recklessly
now.
approach or attack you. While their edge guarding isn't as dangerous, the existence of a charge shot projectile, as well as a near infinite amount of mix-up and setups involving
anyway,
headers,
since
gives them some of
4-set
the best
flower deals physical damage,
the hard part is getting their opponent into that
and
situation
I can deal superconducting stuff, I'm wondering
as underrated has a lot to do with having
if I go for physical damage, if I'll deal more damage that way. I haven't tested it out yet. I'm gonna test it out right now.
So if push comes to shove, you can go Samus neutrally in your opponent in last
These pieces are super good, but like, I don't think anyone's ever going to use them.
But in competition, you do whatever it takes to win. Moving on, let's talk about Pit, and by extension Pit 2, I mean Dark Pit. Famously considered the most painfully average characters in all of Smash, they've been viewed in a very indifferent light. Ultimate's iteration of the Pits is probably the best we've gotten so far, and consequently that means they're the most viable in tournaments, yet even to this day, the consensus on them is that they're just average. Almost all of its assets are complemented by a flaw in equal measure. Their impressive grab speed is offset by poor air physics. Their long-lasting hitboxes are offset by inconsistent range, most notably their aerials. Their strong recovery is kept in check by being easy to edge guard, especially in the two-framing department. Their respectable neutral game is restricted by their limited advantage and disadvantage state. None of this makes him a particularly bad character per se, but it also prevents him from being an exceptionally good one too. This ultimately makes him a fundamentals-oriented character whose performance hinges more on how well the player understands the game on a universal level, not so much Pit's own merits. And that's where I think they don't fly as high, no pun intended. As a Funnies character, Pit and Dark Pit will
Yeah, no
always
one
be
else can
judged
benefit
against
from
other
Shiminawa,
Funnies
and everyone
characters
that has
such as Rob,
Shiminawa,
Altena, Lucina,
which is
Claude, and
just
more.
Yoimiya.
Common sense dictates whoever offers the greatest return on investment is gonna be the most popular one. Sadly, that's almost
So
never
yeah,
Pit. Credit where credit is due. If there's one thing Pit has that the other Funnies characters don't, it's flexibility. He's a very comfortable character to play and isn't too lacking neither offense or defense. But being a jack of all trades, master of none, there's nothing players can really tap into and exploit to the fullest. So, if they're average, why am I saying they're underrated? The answer is that we don't know where their average actually is. It's true that most characters can outperform him in various areas. Mario has a better combo game, Fox has more mobility, Shulk has more range, Samus has better projectiles, but in exchange, each of these characters has a weakness that Pit doesn't. Average isn't necessarily a bad thing, and not counting the quote-unquote inconsistency with Pit's neutral or forward air, Pit's a very consistent
of
character.
course.
I think a lot of people forget that since Ultimate's roster is relatively balanced, average still puts you in a decent position. Also, I don't care what anyone says, Guardian Orbiters are insanely broken. It's an aerial shield that's positive on break and spammable. Dark Pit's Electroshock Arm is stronger than a smash attack with
Alright, so first
Mark my
thing
words.
I want to try
I'm not
out
saying Pit is top tier, and that goes
is
to
Prototype
Lucas and
Rancher
the other two characters.
Chi-Chi.
This list is not about who is secretly overpowered, just characters who really deserve
So
more
I'm wondering if
representation
physical
than they
damage
currently have.
bonus can
Let's
apply.
continue, this time with Robin.
Actually, you
I
know
made
what?
a
Why
final
haven't I
place
thought
on
of this
recently,
before?
so this is
I'm gonna
fresh
go
in my
check
mind.
the Google.
This will sound a bit contradictory to what I said in their video, but I think Robin
Or
is
actually,
criminally
I'll
underrated
search
and
in my phone instead. And then there should be some bitches I can test out in here. I want to see the range of Chi-Chi and Barbara's Hydro and Cryo thingy respectively. Chi-Chi actually has quite decent range, but Barbara is incredibly short. But for the most part, as long as you move around a lot and stuff, and the stamina decrease is pretty good.
Leave the future for future generations to worry about.
One,
Items,
two,
artifacts,
freeze,
artifact
freeze,
sets.
4.
The wiki probably has info. Seed-eyed foam deals physical damage. This effect damage is affected by enemy's physical resistance but is unaffected by physical damage bonus. Enemy defense or enemy damage reduction. Oh. The seed-eyed foam will trigger when any ability heals regardless if HP is actually... Okay then.
1, 2.
I could have known that earlier. So, I guess her old set already worked well enough. But like, I wonder if she'll deal more damage with attack percent rather than healing bonus. If I go for full attack percent on all her stuff.
One, two.
Sure, I'll go for this.
Faster? Okay, faster. Life goes on. Speed of light. Hey!
Holy shit.
Hire the fairy.
Well, they died too quickly. Crit also doesn't matter with
1,
this stat,
2, breathe.
which
3,
is a crying shame considering. Just look at those numbers. Yeah, Chi-Chi can definitely consistently deal the max damage of Ocean Hued. And that's what you want for Chi-Chi.
go. Incoming.
Explode. There we go. Okay, 35,000, 36,000. There really doesn't seem to be much of a difference.
1, 2, breathe. 3.
Yeah, I think I wasted my time and artifacts, whatever.
My mind. This will sound a bit contradictory to what I said in their video, but I think Robin is criminally underrated and underplaced. I will acknowledge that when we take into consideration how stacked the Sortie roster is, with
I can
Sephiroth,
go for
Cloud,
one more
Shulk,
run
Aegis,
right
Roy,
now,
and Lucina
so I'm
being
gonna
way
do
more
that.
effective in some way, Robin is seen as a strict downgrade. But Robin is to Sorties, what Rucus is to Ness, or Riku is to other short-range characters, and XYZ character while they're ABC. To start, I feel like I should clarify something about the durability. Not many play Robin for the fact that they're essentially the only character whose moves you cannot spam in a game where attacks are spammed constantly.
What weapon
However,
do you
the
have?
justification behind that is purely
Evonius.
experiential, in that it has nothing to do with their effective power. Them feeling bad to play doesn't mean they're objectively bad, if that makes sense. When armed with Weapon Sword, Robin has kill power rivaling or even exceeding that of Roy or Martha down the summer spot. So even though you can only use like 8 attacks with them, you really only need 3 or 4 to rack up 80% or outright kill them. As to the tones, Robin's defensive play isn't half bad, at least in the out shield department. It's no Game & Watch, but their get-offing tools are serviceable enough to get the job done, and they can make use of their other tools to buy time for whatever's offline to come online again. Something else I feel like people forget about is that Robin is one of the few sorties who can mix up their neutral game. Characters like Roy, Ike, or Lucina have one-dimensional gameplay due to their specials being extensions of their normals. Robin has sword attacks, and projectiles, and trapping tools, and a command grab, giving them more options to surprise opponents, and the ability to force approaches. A common argument against them is how slow they are, and that is a fair point. At the same time, Robin has decent air physics, and most of Ultimate's combat takes place in the air anyway. Also, to repeat, their slow ground game is made less problematic by having tools to force their opponent to come to death. Robin's a good character. I seriously don't understand why people rate them so low. I get that they may feel uncomfortable to play at times, but they have a lot more utility that would make other sorties broken if they had them. It's just that players zero in too much on their flaws to notice the sheer power and versatility in their moveset. Lastly, we arrive at the final
This
underrated
world is
character
full
of
of
this list. By
unsolved
the way, this is
mysteries.
not ordered in any way. I'm not saying Bowser Jr. is number
Stay
one.
close and
Okay,
you will
so
live.
I'm gonna level with you guys. This next part is gonna be 1000% biased. Tri-State has so many Bowser Jr. mains that crush our locals, it's insane. What boggles my mind more than anything is that so many players ranked Bowser Jr. as like bottom 5 during the early days of Smash Ultimate, and though he did receive a series of patches that buffed him a lot, I cannot fathom how people thought this character is bad. First of all,
Who's our
Jr.'s
target
moves
this
are
time?
broken. I don't care what anyone says. He has a frame 4 jab that kills earlier than some characters' 4 smashes. He has
I
the
want to
original
help.
Steve up air combos in the form of his own up air. His 4 smash is one of the best in the game. A frame 7 at a shield up smash that kills pretty early, several attacks with extremely long-lasting hitboxes, he's solid at a shield game, massively disjointed aerials that aren't even that slow. Clown Car Spin Out is stronger than a smash attack. He has a ledge trapping tool in the form of Mecha Koopa, Abandoned Ship, which can combo off Clown Car for easy kills. This character has so many jank-ass kill setups that matchup check the crap out of any player who isn't aware of them. But the rant aside, Bowser Jr. is a weird character. He's got a lot of moves that are good on paper, but in practice are somewhat impractical. He's very similar to Big Daddy Bowser in some ways, one of which being the need to mix up his approach and neutral despite not being very good
A
at
shield
doing
would
so.
be nice, but
Bowser's a frame 6 command grab to
reverse
pressure
quick
opponents
is
who
what this
shield a
team's
lot,
gonna be
whereas
all
Bowser
about,
Jr. has
so
fake out options with Clown Cart, an attack that many label a worse version of Spin Dash. Although considering how broken Spin Dash is, a store-brand version of Spin Dash is still pretty insane. He also lacks a lot of pragmatic tools like safety on shield. This is somewhat alleviated by having 2 projectiles, but neither of them are threatening enough to really bait approaches, thus requiring him to approach himself, even though his forward and back air are extremely unsafe on shield. Unlike his daddy though, Junior doesn't have the same kind of explosive kill power. Most of his early kill options are hard to pull off safely. Clown Car Spin Out is one of the strongest moves in the game, but is minus 40 on shield. If your opponent blocks it, you're screwed. Then of course his up B, which is also very hard to pull off consistently. So yes, Bowser Jr. is objectively worse than Bowser and a lot of other characters, but he's nowhere near as bad as everyone makes him out to be. The guy has so many cool setups and traps that can take a lot of opponents by surprise. And there we have it. You may have noticed a trend among my underrated choices. All of them have good stuff, but not the right kind of good stuff or the right combination of good
I could
stuff.
go
That being
Elemental
said, they're still
Mastery.
good, and I feel like a
Oh,
lot of
look at
players
that.
can sauce tournaments if they just give them a try. I know there's a ton of other characters that could have made this list, but I chose the 5 that I thought deserved more credit than people give them the most. So with that said, let me know.
Hold on, let me check something real quick. It still scales off of attack. And the healing scales off of HP. And that's really low scaling. The burst scales off purely off HP though. Oh, there's a build for Cookie that uses Flower of Paradise Lost as well. That's also for Hyper Bloom. Well, I guess this is good for now. Although I could replace one of the HPs for Elemental Mastery. Or I could just replace the healing percent for Elemental Mastery, the healing bonus. I'll try that, at least. This is literally worthless. Or actually, this one's way more worthless. Nice. That just hurts to see.
What they do this?
Down in the comments what your list of underrated characters would be and why. Or if you disagree with any of my choices, then feel free to elaborate as well. That's gonna be it for today. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at @barsrare, join my Discord server, and while you're here, I don't know if this is just me, but I feel like the average towards Fighters Pass 2 didn't actually start until the halfway point.
Your bond is
I remember
strong.
when Min Min first came out, people were groaning about how there was someone with more range than arguably the longest range fighter, who's actually good, no offense, Belmont. But
Animal
without
tech.
getting looking around the Roman play rate, not
Absorption
many bonds
test.
should be a problem.
Stand clear.
Eventually, afterwards came Steve.
Enhanced
and
animal
most
module
question at the time
75.
was, how the hell did an inside joke become
Torn
the
to
actual
oblivion.
thing? That sort of mentality persisted for a while. It was seen more as a joke, or a crossover achieved that not really met a destroying threats. The discussion of Min Min's Steve and Sephiroth's liability was not
There is
given a
no-
lot of attention because our perception of what was quote-unquote
Absorption
good in a
test.
character was still in a very rudimentary
Stand with me.
state. So when the Aegis,
Lightning
Pyra, and Mythra were
terrified.
brought to us, there was simultaneously a breath of fresh air that we finally had a traditional sword, but also a massive punch in the face that would signal all the doomsday and backlash against Fighters Pass 2. Faster than any DLC fighter since Bayonetta, Pyra
Animal
Mythra's potential
hyperstasis.
was immediately recognized in tournament play,
Now you
becoming
shall
arguably
perish.
the most popular character throughout late 2021 and early 2022 before the rest of the competition began running the matchup. Even then, there's been absolutely no
Alright,
shortage
never
of
mind,
them,
I
so it's
can't
about
actually
time to
quick
talk
and
about why
do this
everyone
domain.
plays Pyra and Mythra. Normally my why now slash everyone
Literally
plays
the only way
Mythra
for
is
you
mentioned
to be able to switch domains fast so I can see
especially on the other two channels, Bars 1 and
Animal
2.
test
The reason I don't do
6308.
so
is
as
if
often
you have
as
a
Bars
Synamo
3 is
DPS.
mostly because despite having debatably the most extensive roster of game franchises the world has ever seen, it's surprisingly likely that players did not have any idea of the fighter's
Stand
name
with
of
me.
origin, choosing to stick
Can
with
do
them
crowd
for
control.
gameplay focus reasons.
Another
That
version
isn't
Venti.
mostly because Steve has never played Minecraft, but that's not really the reason they're playing Steve, if that makes sense. Like, I don't main Cloud out of my love for Final Fantasy, not entirely anyway. It's mostly because he's a very comfortable and adaptable sword fighter with a good balance of power, speed, range, and mobility. That being said, character appeal plays a major role in any game, whether player versus player or player versus environment. Joker has a higher play rate than Hero because Persona 5 was a hot topic for several years, still is today, whereas Dragon Quest not so much. In contrast, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 were a bit smaller in recognition back then. Obviously right now they're big enough to be at the start or end of Nintendo Direct, but I'd wager not many people actually knew about the Aegis before seeing them. However, they are attractive, and as they say, waifus are rated E for everyone. In all seriousness though, a good first impression definitely helps, but to keep that impression, you have to make up for it with game stats, and already they have two things going well for them. The first is their archetype. Even though players complain too much about there being too many sword fighters, they occupy a big market share for good reason. The class is generally considered safe and reliable. In a game where microspacing can make all the difference between dealing damage or taking it, having massive hitboxes works to your advantage. The second is their distinction from the rest of their peers. Fighters Pass 2's dominance is primarily a result of their unique mechanics, or gimmicks as we call them. Meanwhile, the Aegis
I actually
are
got
more or
some
less normal. You don't have to get used to any weird gameplay quirk or unorthodox
missions
moveset to get the hang of them.
around
Their
here.
hit and win conditions
So
are
I have this
digestible by
teleport
anyone who's played
waypoint
a sword
unlocked now.
before, which
I
is
also got a
basically
freaking
everyone.
thingy
A
there.
lot of their initial
Hey, look at
and
that, there's
continuing
a road
popularity
guard.
has to
Another
do with
large
having a
road
relatively
guard.
low learning curve, making it easy to garner decent results off of just bread and butter combos and setups in tandem with good fundamentals. Not saying the easier a character is, the more popular they are, but much of why someone like Sheik doesn't have a big following is because she's very difficult to play at an optimal level. Pyra and Mythra have arguably the highest return on investment out of any character in the game, besides maybe Roy. The premise is simple. Pyra and Mithra functionally possess the same moveset. Where they differ is in attributes, the former emphasizing power and range, and the latter prioritizing speed and mobility. To play them well, you have to know when to switch between one and the other whenever necessary. Interestingly, characters with a gimmick surrounding transformation have had that work against them more often than not. You would think having access to more attacks or attribute changes would greatly boost their versatility, and it does. On paper, but in practice, they're usually balanced around being required to make use of every single possible attribute to perform at the highest level, for better or worse. Many top players have suggested Shulk has the potential to be the best character in the game, and Pokemon Trainer was indisputably top tier, at least before the nerfs to Ivysaur. I plan to go over this in more detail in my Pokemon Trainer video whenever I decide to make it, but a recurring issue among Transformers is their inability to access all of their strengths at once, instead only being allowed to tap into half at a time. They each differ in this greatly.
Matthew made a freaking
as a Venn diagram. While they each have their own strengths,
video on a Fire Emblem character.
Their traits is significantly larger than that found in Shulk, Pokemon Trainer, and Zelda and Sheik before they were split apart. Like I said before, Pyra and Mithra have the same normals. Their forward tilts are the same, up airs, down smash, etc. The only difference is the variance in strength, speed, range, knockback, etc. Which in fairness do change things up a lot, but the feel is still recognizable. Mithra forfeits a lot of kill power and some range while gaining tremendous speed and mobility. However, she doesn't give up too much range. She's still able to outspace most non-sword fighters, and even against other members of their class, her speed gives her the upper hand by striking them before they strike her. Meanwhile, Pyra trades speed and mobility for more range and extreme kill power, but the loss of speed isn't so great that it invalidates the increased range. If hypothetically we were to say each of Pokemon Trainer's Pokemon have 75% of a single character's total power, Pyra and Mithra each have 90%. They're closer to a full character than other Transformers because their base level is still very close to a normal fighter's, thus giving their strengths more of a chance to shine through. This is further amplified by them having a definitive purpose throughout a match. Take your fellow Xenoblade Graf Shulk. It may seem like a no-brainer to use Buster Art and low percents to rack up damage before swapping to Smash Art to finish the job, but each Monado Art comes with its own risks. The rule of thumb for Aegis is to open up with Mithra to rack up percent with their combos while gaining a situational advantage before swapping to Pyra to finish the kill. Obviously, there are times when Pyra is good at low percents and Mithra at high percents, but since they have contrasting strengths, that lets you tag between them as the game progresses, once again tying back to the whole thing of being digestible. It's true that there are two characters with their own set of moves you have to work around, but rather than being two halves that make up one character, it's two characters to the price of one. It's like if Mario could swap to Bowser and vice versa. Essentially, what separates the Aegis from Shulk or Pokemon Trainer is that the latter two's different stances have weaknesses that can only be mitigated by switching forms, but in doing so, they expose themselves to new weaknesses. Pyra and Mithra are incredibly polarizing characters, no one can deny that, but their attributes complement each other very well and leave them with few collective weaknesses outside of maybe an exploitable recovery, and that's a hard maybe, leading me to the biggest reason why everyone plays them. They're extremely overtuned. Empirically speaking, it's more evident in Mithra, but even her counterpart has this trait. Physics alone, Mithra is basically top 5. She has incredible mobility on the ground and in the air, not really lacking in any particular field besides maybe jump height. Now, if we go by pure frame data, sword fighters are balanced by having worse frame data than close range fighters to balance out their increased range. Mithra is the exception to this. She is fast enough frame data to box up close while also having a sword. Another weakness sword fighters have is their subpar combo game due to lower hit stun or higher knockback skill, only allowing them to land 3 or 4 hits at low percents and just 1 or 2 at higher ones. Mithra is once again the exception to this, as many of her attacks have very low knockback scaling to allow her to combo all the way to 130% plus. Her excellent mobility also contributes to this, letting her chase after opponents even if she hits them very far away. In other words, Mithra literally breaks the rules that balance abilities, frame data, and combos. Granted, she still faces the same issue as Sheik or Beast Joker, where she hits you a dozen times and you only take 60%, but it comes extremely easily. When you play Mithra, almost everyone has to pay a heavy tax against you. Her speed and mobility is so good that she's almost guaranteed to land a first strike on you every time. A lot of people like to argue that for all of Mithra's speed, she still has to approach you, which makes her prone to being whip punished or zoned out by projectiles, but that's if you can even keep distance from her. Yes, you can whip punish Sheik if she has really short range. Mithra has a sword, and she's very fast. How do you zone someone who can go from one side of town and city to the other in less than a second? You can't. Playing defensively against her isn't as effective as it looks either. The frequent defense for Mithra is that her attacks are unsafe on shield, and that's true. But 1, her generous range prevents her from being out of shield punished by a lot of fast options, and 2, Mithra's attacks are so fast that by the time most players realize they successfully blocked a down tilt or up tilt and try to respond with an attack, Mithra has either ran away or thrown out another attack to punish a shield drop. Even if you were to get the upper hand on her, keeping her at disadvantage is quite a challenge. She has no trouble landing on account of her fast fall speed and foresight, letting her escape untrue combos or juggles on top of having a frame 2 air dodge. Alternatively, she can just drift away from your attacks or even throw out an aerial of her own since they're so fast. This means the only real weakness Mithra has is kill power, or lack thereof, which I think is complete horse manure by the way. Forward Smash in 2 frame has enough range to whiff punish the entire cast and is rate 14. She can tech chase you extremely easily with dash attack or down smash to set of edge guards. However, objectively speaking, she does struggle to kill. Although, switching to Pyra completely remedies this problem, and all it takes is a single press of down B. Unlike Shulk, who takes a massive risk in activating Smash Heart, swapping to Pyra is hardly any risk at all. If anything, it just pressures the opponent even more. Few things are more terrifying than being at like 130 plus and staring down Pyra. On to Pyra. She is collectively agreed upon as the weaker of the duo, not by any fault of her own. It's just that platform fighters value mobility and frame data so heavily, and Pyra is quite slow, but not that much slower. For example, her neutral and forward air are 3 frames slower than Mithra, while her up and down air are 4 frames slower. Here's the thing, Pyra has more range, considerably more range. When spaced correctly, that 3 to 4 frame deficit only turns out to be 1 to 2. Not that big of a difference. Sacrificing 1 or 2 frames for vastly higher kill power is a trade-off no one would decline. Pyra certainly does compromise on speed and combo potential, but she still has kill setups, meaning she doesn't have to resort to YOLO straight hits to close out stocks, and can safely fish for easy ways to send you to the Shadow Realm. Down tilt and top air is an easy one. There's also down air into literally everything else in her kit. She has some of the easiest ledge trapping and edge guarding out of any character too, and when you factor in how quickly you can swap between the two, Mithra can effortlessly throw her opponent off stage, taking care of the hard part. Then she switches to Pyra and finishes you off while your escape options are smothered out. Say you were in a contest of straight hits, Pyra also benefits from Roy privilege, where anything that isn't a combo tool has enough knockback scaling to kill you. Gentleman jab, forward tilt, up tilt, dash attack, neutral air, forward air, back air, up air, neutral B, side B, up yet a shield, even down throw. Just about all of Pyra's attacks kill. Better yet, she has a frame 3 gentleman jab that kills. Her overwhelming range makes her one of the deadliest opponents in last Dark Lasted scenarios, in that you have to somehow find a way to get her the range to score a hit, even though she has the most generous range out of any sword in the game. Also, her Shulk in my opinion would one thing if her ground game was bad, but no, her ground game is amazing, and her mid game even more so. This means the only real weakness Pyra has is her mobility, or lack thereof.
Speed of light.
She struggle against rushdown characters to neutral at disadvantage. The only scenario where she isn't is when her rushdown is damaged enough that one weakness will wipe them out. Although switching to Mithra completely remedies this problem, and all it takes is a single press to the down B. Pyra
Bird.
enough to where one quick will wipe them out. Although switching to Mithra completely remedies this problem, and all it takes is a single press to the down B. Pyra and Mithra are what happens when you take a character with clear strengths and weaknesses and make it so you can give up 50% of your strength to eliminate 90% of your weakness on demand. Faster combo-heavy characters like Sheik, Bayonetta, or Mario are kept in check by not having very many kill options or just lower base kill power overall, requiring them to not only bring their opponents to a very high percent, but also have to let the right attack on them at the right place on stage. Heavy-hitters like Bowser and Kelsey are kept in check by their underwhelming range or difficulty limiting shot to being slow or easy to bounce off. Even characters who temporarily gain increased pressure or mobility has to pay a heavy cost just really as they would like. For Shulk, to gain increased mobility, he has to give up damage, kill power, or
Speed of light. Hey!
getting one shot. Joker does have Arsene, but it's involuntary. It's not like he can save it up for when he needs it the most. Mithra lacks kill power, but she can instantly fix that by swapping to Pyra. Pyra lacks mobility, but she can instantly fix that by swapping to Mithra. That sense of agency not only lends credence to their consistency and competitive, but also minimizes player
Opening
frustration.
box of Adeptictrix.
The number one reason players switch is on the biggest turn off in any game is lack of agency, unable to change or change something.
Nice.
Cut
to the chase.
Realizing no matter whatever will change the fact that those characters
Your grand finale.
potential as someone like
Unleash.
Actually talking about it brings sees Cosmos drop them in exchange for ages. I don't blame him or anyone else who hates ages. Why
Don't blink. Hey. I'll be
such an
unstuck.
easy decision to make without checking to create ages on and
Speed of light.
the idea of being transformed
Change of plan.
traits to have an answer for many situations. Much of
Life goes on. Don't blink. Hey. Incoming.
not being able to tap into all of their strengths at once, only one or two at most. Pyro and Nebula can tap into
Speed of light.
90% of their strengths at a time, and typically 10% can be made up for through execution and through flame. It's a lot harder to make up for 25%.
Unleash.
This makes me believe that transforming characters in Smash will only be popular or good if massively overtuned, but if they're massively overtuned, that makes them
Wheel of life. Don't blink.
for how simple they are to pick up. Why bother playing one character when you can play two characters in one where you're individually as strong as that one character? It's a no-brainer. Reminds me a lot of Smash 4 Cloud, not really known for any crazy gimmicks or cheesy tech, just a conventionally strong character. Arguably too strong. Then again, this might be a hot
You
take, but I
give,
actually
you
think that's what
receive.
separates them from the likes of Steve, Kazuya, or Min Min. To beat Pyro and
Oh,
Ninja,
yeah.
you just have to better player them. Fighting them is more straightforward than fighting Steve, for instance, and I'd honestly rather fight Aegis over Ice Climbers or Sneak. But I played Cloud, I enjoy straightforward matchups. Anyways, that's gonna be it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have, it'd be awesome if you could leave a like and subscribe. Consider following me on Twitter at @FarsFerb, joining my Discord server, and check out my other Why Everyone Plays
I
videos
got
if
a
you haven't
little
yet.
distracted,
Until
it
next
seems.
time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.
This video is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. A little bit more about that when we get into the video. Trust
great.
has always been a key component in the Fire Emblem series. Usually.
Happened to Doctor? Poison is on. Build an army, trust nobody. Fire Emblem.
From it originally being a single mechanic meant to reward players
Fight this on for size. Strike is one. And step.
figuring out which enemies
Nowhere to hide.
knock down, gain stats when being deployed
Incoming.
to, and finally, in the later entries, rewarding the use of trust with the unspoken lore of the characters.
Speed of light.
Support
Hey.
conversations. And Fire Emblem Awakening
Got lucky
was
that
created
time.
as a sort of accumulation of all of the series' main elements, and one character who I feel represents the idea of learning to trust. It's the paranormal Pelagian Pysog Prestidigitator piously
blink.
pursuing your protagonist's passion, Tharja, the Dark Mage. Sadly, my original Pelagian sponsor decided their time was best suited for the Grimleal, so instead I looked for a much more powerful and darker force to sponsor this video. And it's here I found Raid Shadow Legends, a free-to-play RPG that has branched out far beyond just a mobile game, as Raid is constantly growing with experiences, from monthly updates that provide a nearly endless flow of content to adding multiple interesting champions for the player to experience. As well, there are great dungeons to raid with rad boss designs, and a massive amount of options provided to the player to make the champions that they like grow by using the ones they don't to power them up. And if you sign on using my link in the description, you can get a jump start to the adventure by receiving a bunch of in-game bonuses and a free champion in the form of Taro, someone who can strongly shake up the battlefield with his debuffing abilities. Though, if he isn't your flavor, Raid has actually recently introduced a new champion based off of the professional mixed martial artist, Ronda Rousey, which you can get for free by playing for at least 7 days between now and February 20th. So, thank you again to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Tharja is a recruitable party member from the Pelagian army who can join Crom and the Shepherds during Chapter 9 of Awakening. From here, she develops a major obsession with the player character Robin and weirds out most other members of the army with her mannerisms, habits, and hexes, leaving a rough first impression of the
Life
host
goes
fun.
on.
Though, once she opens up and people work past her veil of doom and gloom, she reveals herself to be a deeply caring and thoughtful person who simply has trouble expressing herself in more direct ways. And this is due in part to the method and location she was raised in. So before we get too deeply into that, let's first understand the meaning behind her name and design. Now first I should address the fact that I'll be using the pronunciation Tharja in this video. It is both because one, I'm more accustomed to saying Tharja than any other pronunciation, and two, it's seemingly the official pronunciation of the English name, at least according
Don't blink.
to my
Hey.
employer.
Tharja, I appreciate your help.
Incoming.
Though I do recognize that some might find
Rise.
Tharja to be a more appropriate
Unleash.
pronunciation, given that Tharja's name is
Speed
simply
of
a
light.
play on her true Japanese name, Sari, though that name seems to be under debate as well, as some believe the Japanese name of Tharja is Salia, seemingly based off of this Max Factory and Good Smile statue with a name written on the box. Though for me, I doubt her name is actually intended to be read as Salia, because Salia isn't really a name, but more so a modification of the name Sally, where Saria is actually a name itself. Also, poor romanization of names
With sword comes shadow.
not only secondhand merchandise, but is official Fire Emblem material as well.
Your
Also,
grand
as I
finale.
mentioned, the name
Unleash.
Salia doesn't really mean anything, even if we
Don't
take it
blink.
as a
Hey.
modification of Sally. Sally in its own way is a shortening of Sarah, which in itself means princess. And Tharja is not a princess or designed to look like one. So with that understood, I am operating under the assumption that her original name is Saria, and that this was the name that they had in mind when designing the character. Now, the name Saria means a pious woman, or a woman who is devoted to either faith or another, which makes a lot of sense, as one of Tharja's key traits as a character is her obsession with Robin, as well as her utter devotion to the Pelagian dark arts. She is a pious dark mage through and through, so much so that her design reflects her Pelagian origins as well, as Tharja is traditionally depicted wearing a full nylon bodysuit, gold jewelry, and a massive cape marked with Pelagian symbols. And this outfit is the standard one for dark mage attire in Awakening, and while clearly made with sex appeal in mind, also was chosen based on Pelagia's environment as a country, as it is a
Glad
hot
there
and
weren't any
sprawling
poisonous
desert.
mushrooms
Thus,
inside.
it makes sense to have more breathable material be selected for the mage's general design. And this same outfit would go on to be later applied to legacy dark mages like Micaiah, as well as anyone who class changes into dark mage, even having a male variant.
Sure.
And this outfit was seemingly made without Tharja in mind to begin with, as during the design period of Awakening, a lot of the general classes seem to have been designed before the major characters who would fill their roles. This seems to be true for a good majority of characters, including Tharja, who originally seems to be depicted as looking much different than her finalized design, as in her initial look, she actually reminds me a good bit of Shadow of Valentia Sonia's character, which might explain why Heroes gave these two a dual unit, but also Mitsuru from Persona 3. As well, we see another design from seemingly later into development, where she is wearing an ornate horn-like headdress, and it appears to be in an outfit that matches closer to her finalized one. Cool detail, it seems like this design was repurposed into a Cypher trading card for Tharja later on, though eventually they settled on the Dark Mage design for her that we have now. Though, Tharja doesn't have to be a Dark Mage the entire playthrough. She can also class change down the Archer or Knight branch in the base game, as well as Bride if you bought the DLC. Build-wise, Tharja seems designed with the intention of keeping her a mage unit and using her level 5 sorcerer skill Vengeance to its fullest, as her growth rates mostly center around giving her HP, magic, and speed, as well her class options are of course Dark Mage and its branches, as well as Knight, General, and Great Knight. These classes are there to help power up Tharja's defenses, as well as giving her access to powerful skills like Luna and Pavice. This makes it so Tharja can either deal or tank damage in the middle of battles, while her high skill stat ensures that she'll proc Vengeance more often than not. As well, if you're a masochist, and have her trained through Archer and Sniper, you can get her the skill Hit Rate plus 20, which increases the accuracy of her Dark Tomes, making her a truly deadly unit on the battlefield. And these class options, while being visually funny sometimes, also capture Tharja's own personality rather nicely, and their playstyle matches up very well with her character, as her three branches symbolize her past, present, and future. And since Awakening story is all about people coming from the future, let's begin with that. And we find this by looking at the Archer class, which primarily focuses on keeping the unit away from others while still supporting their allies by attacking from a distance. This matches up not only with Tharja's own distant personality, where she would actively avoid close interactions with people, even the ones that she's close to, but also ties directly into her daughter Noir, a physical manifestation of her future, and how she will always be an archer. As well, her relation with Noir fits the role rather well, but we'll discuss that later into the video. Then we go into her present, with the Knight in its branches, as Tharja gains and loses a lot. As she acquires some newfound defenses, she also gains a weakness never found in her life before, a vulnerability to magic. This of course relates to the fact that in joining the Shepherds and meeting so many new people, she has to step out of her comfort zone and open herself up to weaknesses that she has never had to do before. And this is seen through a majority of her support conversations, where she openly acts cold to people and is somewhat intimidating, though the these supports slowly develop and bloom into friendships that become powerful bonds that makes her more effective in the long run, both mechanically and personality-wise. Then of course we reach her past, that being her starting class of Dark Mage, which ties into her history long before the events of the game. As on April 2nd, Tharja was born to a family of Pelagian Dark Mages. Her birthday was actually likely chosen on purpose because April is the 4th month out of the year, and the number 4 in Japanese culture has connotations with death, and this extends to numbers that have 4 in it as well, like 42, which is seen as an unlucky or cursed number, since it can be read as shinai, or to die in Japanese. So a birthday with this type of name is all too fitting of the curse-obsessed mage. Now, the way Tharja described her family life, she was essentially raised in curses, being taught almost out of the womb the nature of dark magic and hexes, even having her own umbilical cord severed by a curse. As well, her parents were seemingly strict yet somewhat absent in her life, likely instilling the practices and expectations for all dark mages before leaving her to fend for herself. As while she seems to care and love them, she also doesn't hesitate to claim that they are dead. Her idea of always looking out for herself above all else, or essentially becoming a fully self-sustaining person, was the norm. This is why she behaves the way she does at camp, almost always dismissing people who approach her and only ever reaching out to others when she needs something in return. She is a very focused individual, and this often comes off as rude or dismissive to those who don't understand her. As well, this mindset might also stem from the culture she grew up around, as Plesia is a nation shaped by its theocratic regime called the Grimlil, a death cult which, while most of the population isn't entirely devout in the worship of Grima, the country still has to pay lip service to the cult. Thus, a lot of their practices and traditions would darken over time. As well, outside thinking is seemingly punished throughout Plesia, judging by Tharja's assumption that small pranks are punishable by severe torture. This culture likely created a specific expectation for dark mages that Tharja follows. As she explains to Henry, Plesian dark mages are supposed to be harbingers of pestilence, famine, and doom. Though, when forcibly conscripted into battling against Ulyss as one of these harbingers, Tharja actively rebelled against not only her king, but her entire country as well, joining Crom's shepherds to save her own life, being almost confused by Crom's willingness to trust her at her word. But his honesty wins her loyalty in the end, as while she didn't view Plesia as evil, she did view Mad King Gangrel's careless use of her countrymen's lives to further his own gain as a cause she didn't deem dying for, though this opinion might appear hypocritical to some, as Tharja is notorious for hexing her own allies with sometimes life-threatening curses, with the motivation of simply seeing what would happen if she did. And while this is likely a holdover of a mindset she grew up with, it should be noted that she usually does this with intention of curing it immediately after it takes effect, as not only does this allow her to gain a greater understanding of curses so that she can dispel them if something similar ever targets one of her allies, she also does greatly regret whenever one of her experiments goes wrong, being the first person to address a wound that she might have caused, and even though she enjoys toying with people in a somewhat sadistic way, she knows when she's pushed too far and actively apologizes for her actions. As well, she isn't a hex maniac. She understands that they are powerful, but that they shouldn't be used for personal things like love. Instead, they should only be used to encourage people to open up about what they really want. As, while she insists that she isn't a good person, her time within the Shepherds allows her true personality to finally begin to blossom as she grows to trust people around her. As Tharja is well aware that curses are much more than weapons. It's magic that can make dreams come to reality. Whether the dreams are good or bad really depends on the target of the curse. Thus, when she assists her allies using hexes, it must be something that she truly wants, especially given how fickle curse magic can be sometimes with things as simple as names. We even see that in her warrior support with Robin, Tharja is constantly casting hexes on the whole army to ensure their safety in the oncoming battles. As well, you may be surprised to find out that Tharja, someone who dabbles with death constantly, takes it rather harshly, constantly blaming herself for the death of her own allies, believing that she's the one at fault because she could have done more, even though she's already working herself to the bone. As well, Tharja seems willing to lend a hand to help people overcome their own personal demons if they approach her on the matter, like in the case of Lan Ku, where Tharja not only spends a considerable amount of time delving into the history of Lan Ku, but also formulating a ritual that could cure him of his gynophobia, or in the case of Gregor, who she ends up channeling the spirit of his dead brother through her own body, so that the two of them could finally say goodbye and set both their spirits at ease. Though, this does bring up a noticeable soft spot for Tharja. She always seems to pull punches on matters involving family, as, in her support with Noe, she actively tries to hide the fact that Noe's parents are long dead, in an attempt to try to comfort her. As well, in her support with Libra, she breaks from her bleak and gloomy self momentarily to comfort Libra on his extremely harsh life that left his soul polluted. And then you have her support with Kellum, which begins with her speaking of her own family, but then going on to perform a ritual to ensure that Kellum's family is safe, even showing genuine joy when it's revealed that her actions not only saved the family, but led to Kellum becoming an uncle. And that's one detail that tends to get glossed over. Family is a major importance to Tharja. We even see in multiple endings with Awakening, they demonstrate Tharja's value of family over most things, either in the orphans that she raises with Libra, to the family her and Donald established, to even her own daughter, Noir, who she has an extremely complicated relationship with. As in the failed timeline of Awakening that Noir comes from, she describes Tharja as corrupted due to the death of her lover, dedicating her entire life to revenge and ultimately ignoring Noir when she wasn't being used as a lab rat for hexes. This is a Tharja who has completely lost herself to dark magic and become no better than the parents who raised her. Though, fate is never something set in stone, and in meeting Noir, Tharja is able to change herself to avoid such an outcome. As while Tharja and Noir's support begins like most others, Tharja actively being cold towards her daughter and interrogating her as to why she is mimicking her movements on the battlefield. When Noir reveals that she had made a habit of learning her mother's movements because she wanted to help her with hexes, Tharja accepts her strange behavior and decides to take Noir in as her dark magic pupil. Though, their time together proves confusing to the current timeline Tharja, as while Noir may have the form down, she has absolutely no magic capabilities outside of combat casting, and this is why she likely starts off as an archer, a unit who watches their allies from a distance and supports them the best they can. Yet, Noir is a perfect vessel for someone with great hexing potential, and is strictly loyal to her mother. She'd be completely indisposable to Tharja, but for some reason her future self never taught Noir dark magic, and she would soon come to realize why. Tharja of the future, even in her maddened state, refused to teach her daughter curses because of where curses truly stem from. As I explained earlier, they are the magic that can make dreams come true. This power is extremely pleasant, but also toxically corrosive on the soul, no matter who learns it, but becomes excessively more addictive. And some dark mages find an excuse to use it as often as possible. And if the cursed talisman that Noir carries says anything about her, she would have been easily corrupted by this magic as well. So, out of love for her daughter, and not wanting to doom her to the same fate her parents did, she refused to teach Noir anything about cursed magic. It can also be assumed her future self was even willing to use hexes on her daughter as a guinea pig in order to create a negative correlation between the craft and herself, doing as Tharja does best in trying to drive her out of her life by becoming a villain who she could hate, a trend seen early on in multiple of her supports, as deep down, she loved her daughter, but had trouble expressing it. And in the newer timeline, seeing that even through the hellish torment she put her through, that Noir still loved her as her mother, Tharja finally was able to say it directly to her daughter, in a somewhat bittersweet moment between the two, which could be entirely ruined if you do the father support with Noir, which isn't written very well, even outside of Tharja's characterization. I mean, Virion is literally immune to curses, and it's one of the cruxes of him and Tharja's relationship, so I don't even know how this made it through the writing phase. So, I'm just gonna pretend that it doesn't exist for the most part. All the important details will be picked from it, everything else will be ignored. It's the perfect timeline. Now, I've discussed a lot about Tharja throughout this video without getting into one of the most important and interesting elements of her character. That's right, the fact that she has the nicest body in the army. But actually, as Tharja's physical appearance is something that is made mention of multiple times throughout the game and its DLC. As well, based on both a bit of censorship drama and future games referencing the character, it has become one of her most flanderized aspects, as within the perspective of Awakening, the topic of her body is actually handled in an interesting way. Now,
Flag
for
fly,
context,
and leap.
I do believe that her design was
Don't
made
blink.
with seduction in mind. I mean, they gave her a nylon bodysuit and a low raspy voice. It's pretty clear what intelligence systems wanted you to get out of Tharja. But she herself doesn't play into any of the sexy character tropes in her writing. As while she does basically admit to using dark magic to get the body she has, as well as the fact that she doesn't do any special training or routines to keep her figure, her main portrait and posture does not display her body in any sensual way. Instead, it puts her main interests and personality forward. And this was true all the way back in her conceptual phase. As well, some of her dialogue suggests that she often covers herself up with her dark mage cape, kind of like a Dracula. Which, to me, makes a lot of sense, as one thing a lot of media outside of Awakening seems to forget about Tharja is that she is extremely antisocial, so much so that it becomes a detriment in a lot of her conversations. From, as I mentioned earlier, her just jumping to taking on the role of a villain in a conversation in order to end it, she also actively avoids eye contact with people, even in very intimate situations such as getting confessed to, as these actions make her uncomfortable. Getting too close to Tharja tends to stress her out, and this applies especially to her body, as she is made physically uncomfortable by comments made about her body from the rest of the cast. From Noe mentioning her breasts, to Cordelia and Olivia envying her figure. In the case of Cordelia, she actively has to hex herself in order to ignore the embarrassment that she feels after Cordelia brings it up. And of course, the infamous curtain scene, which, ironically, according to Kohei Maeda, the censorship of this scene had the opposite effect and made the scene appear more provocative than less. Though, luckily, in other media, Tharja's opinion on her outfit doesn't seem to change, always ignoring the provocative design of the Plegian Dark Mage and pointing out to others how it is a cultural outfit of her profession and people, like in her support with Olivia and Warriors regarding their outfits, as well as her conversations regarding the Plegian festival wear in Heroes, for the most part. Now, why Tharja chooses to take on this appearance is never directly stated, though judging by all the implications around her figure and how she acquired it, it's clear that this is the body she herself dreamt of, and has nothing to do with any outside influence. She really do be out here, girl bossing. But the reason I make a point to highlight her design like this is more so to point out that while she was originally made with a seductive appeal in mind, the way her character and design is actually handled in Awakening is a lot better than some future entries or merchandise might make it seem. Though, it is partly clear that Tharja was a character that the developers of Awakening wanted to feel unique, as outside of her being someone who's much more gloomy than the rest of the cast, which instantly makes her stick out, she is given a number of unique special event tiles and barrack quotes when paired with Robin. Even her confession scene with Robin is unique, as it changes the standard pink bubble background for a tealish green one. And, at least according to color theory, green tends to symbolize growth and new beginnings, where pink symbolizes innocence, purity, and romance. Tharja's confession here is different because in falling in love with Robin, she has grown as a person past the one she once was, which is partly referenced in her and Olivia's beach conversation, where she'd rather die than be caught in pink. Though, some people believe the green here in the confession CG is in reference to the term green with envy, but to me, that interpretation doesn't make any sense really anyway. Though, now that I've mentioned Robin, I should discuss Tharja's behavior towards them, as no matter what gender you select for Robin, Tharja will always be obsessed with him. Now, the reason she becomes obsessed can stem from two specific places. Firstly, according to the Japanese website for Fire Emblem, which gives small bits of lore for characters during Awakening's lifespan depending on the chapters, Robin's visage would appear often in Tharja's dreams and engage in romantic acts with her, which, seemingly thanks to her love-starved life before joining the Shepherds, had an incredibly enchanting effect on her, as well given the nature of hexes, where dreams turn to reality, Tharja wished to be loved in such a way outside of her dreams and pursued Robin with her stalker-like behaviors. Though, one major influence on why Robin in specific might appear in her dreams instead of others has less to do with them being one of two protagonists of Awakening and more to do with them literally being the vessel for her nation's god, as their magic aura would likely resemble Grima's, with them even commenting that locations like Naga's Cradle, which has a blessing and rejuvenating effect on most people, doesn't seem to affect Robin. As well, Robin openly wears Plesian clothing, making them much more approachable than other members of the Shepherds. We can even see that Tharja has an easier time talking with Plesians as she talks with Henry pretty openly. Though, much like her physical appearance, this aspect of her personality has also become severely flanderized future material. As, in Awakening, her infatuation with Robin is clear and is of course written in a slightly tropey way. But funny enough, even though I know why Tharja gets roped in with the yandere trope, I find it kind of funny that the majority of her conversations come off as more tsundere than anything else. In fact, she kind of rivals Severa as being the tsundere of the game. When it comes to Robin, the game even goes out of its way to specify that she spends every waking hour she has stalking them. Yet, almost all of her endings outside of the one with Robin show that her obsession with them is more than just a romantic one, as beyond the supports themselves, in most of Tharja's endings, it describes her actual life with the person she married, except for with Kellum, but Kellum's ending is a joke, so we don't ever really factor that one in. And while this behavior of Tharja likely helped lead to her own popularity, with her being ranked as the third most popular female character in Awakening, and most popular non-protagonist parent character, as well in Heroes, where she initially ranked third among all female characters in Fire Emblem in one of the Choose Your Legends poll, her obsession with Robin, much like her looks, quickly became the main focal point of her character in appearances in other media, even being stretched to this seemingly fourth wall breaking infatuation with the players themselves, with the idea being twisted into the Tharja rework in Fire Emblem Fates, that being the diviner Rajat, who may as well have become the physical embodiment of flanderization, as Rajat's character, while not being inherently bad, isn't the same as Tharja, as while she is clearly inspired by Tharja, a lot of her actions are a lot softer, and her intentions being more good-natured. This is not to say that Tharja is entirely evil, or that Rajat is entirely good, but in a majority of cases, Tharja only acts to fulfill a selfish desire of her own, which, in due part, comes from her own upbringing. Tharja is not a good person. She says it herself. Yet, sadly, at least as far as I can tell, due to Rajat being a twist on Tharja, and with Fates being made right after Awakening, this essentially poisoned the well on Tharja's future appearances, as more often than not, their personalities get mixed, resulting in Tharja becoming someone uncharacteristically forward with people, even dressing and acting in ways that she explicitly says she has no interest in, as well as her becoming much less focused as a character, and sort of missing the charm that she initially had that made her so popular. And it's the same charm that made her one of my favorite units in Awakening. Outside of her fun and powerful character build, she is someone who is much more complex than she initially thought, even presenting herself as almost the anti-Awakening character, someone who claims to be unhelpful and even cruel, while in reality, she is honest to a fault, compassionate, and simply wants to find a family to love and be loved by in return. As well, she is a passionate and quick-witted magus who finds the infinite possibility presented by hexes and curses equally fascinating, while also seemingly wishing to be left alone to research them more deeply. And hopefully, I have helped others come to appreciate her like I do, as I consider Tharja to be one of the most interesting aspects of Awakening, and I've been wanting to talk about her for a long time now. And with that all said and done, I hope you enjoyed this video. For a while now, I've been sort of on the fence about wanting to dab into Fire Emblem content, as I've been a fan of the series for a while now. I entered the series around the time of Awakening's release, and I've played a bunch of entries both new and old, with the Telos series being my personal favorite so far, but I thought, why not? It's a new year after all, and if you guys enjoy this type of content, please let me know. I would love to make more of these in the future, especially all the major Plesian characters, as I believe they are all written wonderfully in their own right. But if you want to see more videos like this in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MediNotTheBadGuy. Every little bit helps keep this channel flowing as smoothly as it does. And if you're searching for a powerful magic tome as Tharja would, I hear one of the strongest tomes around is a copy of Shimonetta, a boring world with contradictory jokes doesn't exist at myshimonetta.com. Remember to give Raid Shadow Legends a try by using the link below in the description.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. Hoping 2023 is going well for everyone so far. So, now that version 3 is well underway and the Dendro element has been thoroughly researched, as a follow-up of sorts to the top 5 strongest teams video I made last month, I wanted to make an updated list on the top 10 best characters that everyone should have, or at least aim for, depending on what your situation is. Obviously, for players who are brand new to the game or haven't been playing for a long time, I understand it's not realistic to expect you to have all these units, but if you are one of those people, I suggest you take this video as a guideline on which characters you should devote your resources to, and when you come across them and manage to get your hands on them. Bear in mind, since we're going through 10 characters instead of the usual 5, the segments we should know will be shorter than usual, but if you're interested in learning more about any of them, I left a few references in the video description. With that done, let's get started with the honorable mentions. You should come to no one's surprise that Genshin has a lot of powerful characters, each with their own unique purposes and niche that can perform at or even above the same level as anyone on the main list. But to keep things a bit more streamlined, I came to the conclusion that the honorable mentions, while very powerful, are not as multi-purpose. Either way, if you have the means and wherewithal to attain them, then you should very much do so. Fischl is a long-standing veteran of Genshin. As one of the game's first characters way back in version 1, she was a stable choice for many players as we navigated through the early game and its limited selection. While in the beginning, she more or less served as an on-field auto-attacker, Fischl has quickly and seamlessly transitioned into the role of an off-field damage dealer. Thanks to her elemental skill and burst making use of her trusty familiar Oz, Fischl has, to my knowledge, the highest electro application in the game, thus making her a prime candidate for any reaction-focused team composition like Taser, Catalyze, also known as Quicken, and Soup, though her DPS uptime is nothing short of extraordinary considering her 4-star rank. The advent of Dendro further necessitates an electro spammer, so you'll find plenty of use for her, that is, if you're intent on going electro-focused comps. On the subject of being a long-standing veteran, arguably the oldest playable character in the game according to canonical age, Zhongli is someone that I don't think anyone really considers tier 0 anymore, but is still a worthwhile mention. He really has only one main job, shield, but his shield is so absurdly broken that it's developed a reputation for playing Minecraft on peaceful mode or Terraria on journey mode. Absolutely zero challenge to any boss or dungeon whatsoever, at least any boss or dungeon that doesn't inflict corrosion. Alongside that, he comes equipped with a few offensive perks, like shredding nearby enemy resistance to all forms of damage while the shield holds, and a massive meteor strike that stuns anyone caught in it. Optimally speaking, he's not the best choice as you pay a serious DPS cut to bring him along, but if we're talking about maximum comfiness, look no further than this guy. Provided you're still making some attempts to avoid enemy attacks, whether by dodging or iframing through burst animations, Zhongli can refresh the Jade Shield before the previous one breaks, making your team basically invincible. Speaking of being a specialist, you might be wondering why I put Yelan in as an honorable mention and not a main cast member, seeing as how I gassed out to everyone a couple weeks ago. To reiterate, I am prioritizing units that I believe will cover the most bases for every player, and though I personally find myself using Yelan more than Xingqiu, at the end of the day she's very top heavy, hyper damage oriented, and doesn't offer the same flexible utility as her 4-star counterpart, who's not only more accessible but easier to use. As for why I elected to not put both of them, I didn't want one element to cover too many spots, since once again we're trying to cover as many bases as possible. Even so, I still stand by the sentiment that when Yelan's banner has a rerun, if you have the Primos to spare, definitely go after her. One of the best Hydro units in the game and will be for a long time. Okay, with the honorable mentions out of the way, let's finally go through the top 10 characters everyone should have. This will be in no particular order, and to repeat, I'll be going through every unit briefly, so if you want more information on them, feel free to check the description down below. Beginning with easily one of the best 5-star characters in Genshin, if not the absolute best, since the day it came out, and likely for a long time to come, we have Kazuha. Kazuha has been touted by many as the true anime archon, since even though he's not explicitly better than Venti, Kazuha exemplifies everything that makes anime the most broken element in the game. As one of the game's first hyperscalers, Kazuha can allocate all of his resources into elemental mastery, a stat that famously synergizes with anime's premier reaction, Swirl. Not only does this mean he deals a ton of damage without having to itemize any other stat, but he converts a portion of his elemental mastery into an unconditional bonus elemental damage buff for his entire team whenever triggering a swirl reaction, something he does without even trying. His fluid mechanics, great synergy, and surprisingly high damage makes him a character you'll be squeezing into virtually any team composition you could think of. But to be honest, even though his combat support is what everyone knows him for, I personally enjoy his mobility more than anything else. It may not seem like a big deal, but trust me when I say that upwards boost helps out so much, and you can even use it while gliding to extend your verticality, something Venti can't do. Definitely deserving of a spot on this list. Next, we have Bennett. This was a no-brainer. While I find myself using him less these days, Bennett still holds the honor of being, with no caveat, no asterisk, the cheapest character in the game to optimize for a multitude of reasons. To start, he requires only one constellation to be considered fully ready, as the rest of his constellations are merely quality of life enhancements, while the other 4 stars usually demand C4 or even C6 to be effective. The only thing you need to best slot him is a high attack weapon and level 90. That's it. Your artifacts can honestly be whatever the hell you want. Energy recharge is of course never a bad option, but you really don't need elemental mastery, crit rate, crit damage, or even percent attack, because he only scales off base attack, which you can only get through your weapon and level. Even so, the sheer offensive and defensive support he provides through one single ability can nearly double the efficiency of his other 3 party members, turning a team of 4 into pretty much a team of 6. There's a vocal minority who find him very unappealing to use, but no one can deny how efficient this guy is. Lots of bonus attack, lots of regeneration, and such a low investment floor for the amount of benefit. Let's go over yet another 4-star character that you've no doubt heard a lot about, Shinto. If Kazuha is the strongest 5-star in Genshin, then Shinto is most certainly the strongest 4-star, a statement I have half a mind to consider a fact now that we have Hyper Bloom. It does cost a bit more to get Shinto to that endgame status, but it's still a solid margin below a 5-star, yet he can do so much more than like the majority of them. Unlike Bennett, who specializes in 2 straightforward albeit essential things, Shinto offers a bit of everything. His rainswords grant a myriad of defensive support like damage reduction, token healing, and super armor, in tandem with offensive support in the form of follow-up Hydra damage, allowing him to supplement his main DPS with off-field Hydra application that echoes their normal attacks. Hydra is a complementary element to many of the game's best reactions like Freeze, Electrocharge, and Vaporize to name a few, and Shinto's Hydra application has the easiest activation clause possible, left click. The damage isn't half bad either. Provided he has good artifacts, he can do quite a bit of DPS himself. Like Kazuha, you'll find Shinto harmoniously fitting into many team compositions because just about all the game's best mandate the presence of at least one Hydra unit. Speaking of Hydra, Kokomi is next on our list. Over the past year, her once terrible reputation has turned a complete 180 to where she's now one of the best units in the game. Kokomi's win conditions are almost identical to Shinto in terms of Hydra application and
From violating matters regarding
Fuck off.
Shinto in terms of Hydra application and being hands-off, but she provides way more sustenance for her party at the expense of super armor. Furthermore, she can provide better longevity for your party while taking care of Hydra reactions, whereas Shinto's only real weakness is that you still need the healer to pair with them. Regarding DPS, if you tailor her build to do that, she can actually be a decent battle healer, and is often used as an on-field driver for taser teams. What really edges her out over someone like Yelan, who I would have put in place of Kokomi, is that she's amazing for Hyper Bloom teams, giving her just a bit more synergy and support. Then again, all 3 of them are top tier. Kokomi is mostly a worthwhile alternative if you feel like turning your brain off and autopiloting through the game. I've yet to see a single instance where enemies deal more damage than she can recover, especially when she uses her elemental burst. It's nigh impossible to suffer any casualties under her watch. The new star Khan to grace us with her presence is Nahida, the elder statesman of the new Dendro element. Like her counterparts, she wasted no time demonstrating how effective she is in teams where Dendro is used, and is the newest tier 0 unit in the game, single-handedly elevating Catalyze and Hyper Bloom parties to top meta status through her incredible hyper scaling, elemental mastery buff in the same fashion as Sucrose, permanent uptime on her skill and burst, and consistent Dendro application. Despite being a tier 0 unit, however, in my humble opinion, Dendro is still a very specialized element. As of writing this script, there's only 4 playable Dendro characters, with I'll hate them joining us in the near future, if not by the time you see this, as the 5th one. Its roster is not as extensive as that of Hydro, Electro, or Cryo. Despite saying all that, Nahida buffs the potency of Dendro to such an extreme that if you have the right team composition and good equipment, everything around you will explode. Literally. That goes to show you how absurd she is. The only thing that made Dendro teams a bit awkward to use prior to her is that Tignari, Kale, and DMC could not keep up with the speed of application of the other elements. Nahida doesn't have this issue, and we get to see firsthand exactly why that's overpowered. We've gone through quite a few support characters, so I think we should take a moment to highlight some of Genshin's premier on-field damage dealers. Hu Tao is one of them. She is brute force personified, a tanky bruiser who converts a portion of her maximum health into attack. She easily becomes one of the strongest attackers in the game. Technically, Noelle and Ito overshadow her in terms of attack power, but what she has that they don't is reactions. Vaporize and Melt can multiply her already insane numbers to go even higher, and thanks to her elemental burst consisting of a single hit screen nuke, proper timing can lead to Spirit Soother dealing well over 200,000 to 300,000 damage. Her consistent damage is also quite good, though to really maximize it, Constellation 1 is recommended. I will say that a leading contributor to why Hu Tao is still such a boss is because of Xingqiu and Yelan. Double Vaporize is super easy to pull off, and Hu Tao makes the best use of the follow-up Hydro damage. Were it not for Yelan, I actually think Hu Tao would have fallen off a bit at this point. However, people enjoy using her because, like everyone else we talked about so far, she's not only strong, but also very easy to use, and can operate at a reasonable level with or without a team built around her. The next one is someone I deeply regretted not adding in the top 5 support studio way back, but I'm not forgetting her this time. Sucrose is a criminally underrated character. Make no mistake, Prevailing Wisdom ranks her as a solid A tier character, so by no means do players call her bad, but there's a sizable number of proponents who argue she can realistically go toe-to-toe with Kazuha in both damage augmentation and reaction-centric comps. I think the reason her rating is so divisive is due to the fact that she's prone to mistiming her abilities. Kazuha suffers from this to some extent, but it's way more pronounced for Sucrose. You need to understand your team's rotation sequence to make the most use out of her. But once you do, what you have is basically a 4-star Kazuha, and with Kazuha being absurdly broken, being a slight downgrade is still broken. Sucrose has equal, if not better crowd control, just as good anima application, and champions the best taster party in the game to this day. You've likely heard of the holy trio of 4 stars consisting of Bennett, Xingqiu, and Xiangling, but really it should be the quartet of 4 stars. Sucrose deserves a spot, even if she may be a bit more arduous to use. For those that don't have Kazuha, Sucrose can fill that void rather competently. 3 more to go, so let's keep things going. We have Raiden Shogun. I like to describe Shogun as a reverse Bennett. Bennett's power stems from his ability to significantly magnify the rest of his team's DPS in exchange for sacrificing his own. Shogun's power stems from her ability to draw on the strength of the rest of her team to maximize her own damage. By using their elemental bursts, it increases the damage of her own, and to further incentivize that win condition, her elemental skill increases the damage of all elemental bursts in her party. So she's not entirely selfish. Through usage of her burst, she accelerates the recharge rate of her entire team, thus allowing her to return the favor, ultimately creating a fully self-sustaining rotation where her party members use their burst, then she uses hers, and repeats the cycle again and again. Raiden National became one of the first widely adopted team compositions for how efficient and consistent it was in dealing lots of damage in a short period of time, making it great for dungeons like Spiral Abyss. Aside from that, Shogun's playstyle is reminiscent of Sucrose in that by powering up the rest of her team, they in turn power up her. This allows Shogun to moonlight as a support or secondary DPS for more niche compositions without trading efficiency as a hypercarry, although my god does she take a lot of investment. We got one more on-field damage dealer to talk about, and it's gonna be one of Genshin's most beloved characters, Ayaka. Ayaka's an interesting case. She doesn't carry the same raw power as Hu Tao, nor does she harness the strength of her team like Shogun. What she does, however, is exploit Freeze, a reaction that stops opponents from moving or attacking and can be chain sequenced provided you can outspeed the internal cooldown. The Cryo element has yet to feature a Catalyst user, making Ayaka the only unit out of the entire roster with permanent Cryo application. With her elemental burst dealing its damage through rapid hits, she can stunlock all enemies who are susceptible to beam so. That saves you the trouble of having to keep everyone together, as well as the trouble of protecting herself against counterattack, thus allowing her team to go full on damage and abuse the fact that you can pretty much do whatever the hell you want. Though that's not to say she doesn't deal her fair share of damage, cause no, she certainly can. It does suck that aside from reverse melt, Cryo is not really known for doing that much damage through either amplification or reactions.
Absorption
Fortunately for
test.
Ayaka though, she doesn't really need it. Cryo features
Stand
a
clear.
plethora of members within the cryo damage bonuses, and Ayaka has fantastic base damage, so in a way her strength is less about
Cut to the
numbers
chase.
and more about lasting pressure. If she was any other element besides Cryo,
Speed
she
of light.
wouldn't be nearly as good. Last but not least, we have Shining. This might sound kind of weird, but virtually all of Shining's success
Incoming.
is a result of an unintended consequence of a mechanic attached to her elemental burst, Snapshot. Or rather, I should say, her elemental burst was intended to snapshot, but I don't think Mihoyo was fully
Animo test 6308.
aware of just how overpowered that would be. Snapshotting, for those who don't know, is a term used to describe an attack's damage being calculated based on the circumstances in when it was first used and maintaining that calculation throughout the duration. In other words, any bonuses that she had when casting Pyronado persist even if the buff itself wears off or she switches out. So you can stack all kinds of steroids on her, like Kazuha's elemental damage amp, Bennett's attack buff, Shogun's burst amp, all that good stuff. And Pyronado will keep all of that for the entire duration, taking an attack that does give or take around 2800% in total to well over 8000%, maybe even 10,000. It's absurd how artificially powerful Shenling can become. I don't know how much I should weigh the benefits of external support when evaluating a character, but for Shenling, she's defined by it. She does so much damage for all the wrong reasons that it's almost comical how she's become one of the best characters in the game. There's actually a recurring meme about Shenling where every new piece of content is an indirect buff to her because she somehow finds a way to make it work on her. Alrighty, there you have it. Just to repeat, I tried to make this list as general as possible. Obviously, there are a ton of characters I didn't mention who could have easily taken a spot like Tomi, Ganyu, Venti, Child, and such. But I was looking at this from the perspective of someone thinking what would be the best use of their primos and money. Which characters are the most efficient, cost-effective, versatile, and future-proof? As usual, you're allowed to play whoever you see fit. I like to think of this video as a reference for whenever someone asks me what units I would recommend they go for. But anyways, hope this was insightful to those who needed it, and entertaining to those who wanted it. It would be awesome if you could leave a like and subscribe to my channel, it really helps me out. Also consider following me on Twitter at Barsphere, joining my Discord server, and if you want something else to check out, why not take a look at my top 5 strongest teams video if you haven't yet. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon in the next one. Take care.
Wow.
Opening box of Adepti
Not again.
First Ranger. To the chase. Incoming. That's everything. On to the next.
It's supposed to be impossible to die with this team.
I'm all for work-life balance, but I think this is pushing it. You give, you receive. goes on. Go! Speed of light. Huh? Absorption test. Hi! Incoming. Hey!
Frick man.
You fool! You fell!
No! I'm stuck! I'm stuck! Oh, I'm not stuck. Okay.
Oh wait, oh no, he's coming. I'm making Crafty chase me around the back of the
I
cave.
hate this. I hate this so much.
No!
We're not gonna have to do this. I'm done.
+2, because you fell off. +2, plus radio.
Just
I played enough.
Katie won't see us.